Laughing for the introduction of this video because it just keeps going. It just keeps getting worse. It just keeps getting more ridiculous. Never before, especially in Xbox history, have I seen such a series of ridiculous headlines where every single day, or multiple times a day, there's something else regarding the running of Xbox, the running of Microsoft, the running of the overall gaming division between the two that just makes you want to go, what the hell is going on? Can we just talk about this? Hold up a minute. You're saying crazy things. Let me break this stuff down. So, oh God, let's talk about Microsoft boss Satya Nadella recently doing a talk over on TBPN, the business YouTube channel. The whole thing's available online. You can go watch that. I want to get into some other comments that have been mentioned by other Xbox figureheads such as Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, Phil Spencer. A lot of stuff just dropping every other day. But one of the most recent ones, you know, right now, check your watches. We'll see what happens in the next 24 hours, is from Satya Nadella over on, like I said, TBPN, talking about the future of their gaming division, and he doesn't even mention Xbox at all. You know, for the sake of a very quick recap, where the hell to even begin to get people caught up? The basic, most recent thing that is doing the rounds in the Xbox conversation is the information around the next Xbox leaking, and it ostensibly being a PC, ostensibly just being a Windows machine with an Xbox layer on top, and that being the direction that Microsoft is going in. What the hell does that mean for the Xbox division? What does that mean for Xbox identity, the brand, etc.? What even is an Xbox? You know, with Microsoft/Xbox themselves saying that even a phone is an Xbox. You know, even in this drinking cup, this is an Xbox. That's why it's screaming. That seems to be the overall push, is let's just get Microsoft stuff onto as many things as possible. And I thought it was fascinating that when asked, or when talking about the future of gaming overall, Microsoft's boss Satya Nadella doesn't even mention Xbox. Instead, he refers to gaming on Windows, which is a horrible series of words. But the need to get their software on as many platforms as possible. He compares it to the likes of Windows Office software, because, you know, the Office suites are available everywhere. He says we want to be everywhere on every platform. Satya and Xbox head Matt Booty have mentioned that they aren't competing with PlayStation or Nintendo as well. Going forward, they're competing with TikTok, apparently, and short-form video, which reminds me of a good few years ago when Phil Spencer, you know, back when the Xbox One was failing against PlayStation and Nintendo, and you had Phil Spencer say that they weren't competing with those other consoles, they were competing with Amazon and Google, and it's like, okay, sure, you know, that whole wider thing of like, you know, we're not competing with the medium that we're in, we're actually competing with people's time. At the time, Spencer was talking about the launch of streaming services, and, you know, the Amazon was going to be going down the Luma route and Google Stadia and all that kind of stuff. And now we have, like I said, Matt Booty and Satya Nadella talking about how TikTok and short form video is the thing that gets in the way of gaming. And if I really stretch what Nadella's, because basically Nadella says, you know, gaming's competition is not other gaming. Gaming's competition is short form video. And they want to innovate around how they make games and how they present them to people. I.e., if you have your phone in your hand and you're choosing to scroll through social media, or you're choosing to watch a series of TikToks or videos on Reddit or whatever the hell it is, if you could just push a button and dive into Ninja Gaiden 4, their assumption is that you would do that instead. It obviously gets away from the fact that playing something like a Ninja Gaiden or any game other than a touchscreen, super simple experience kind of sucks on phones. But that seems to be the thinking that they have. If they can get these games, this library of titles in front of you, wherever you are, whatever you're playing on or able to play on, that somehow that will be a business model that people will respond to, even though they have not, you know, in the last, you know, decade or so. And we've got information to back that up even from 2025. But that is one of the most recent things that has been said anyway, and you can mull that over yourself down in the comments as to whether you think that is the future of gaming or the future of the Xbox brand, and whether you would be satisfied with that idea of a Windows gaming platform instead of anything close to the Xbox ecosystem. Satya says as part of this interview that we built the Xbox console, but well, he didn't say the word Xbox. I'm throwing Xbox in here. God forbid he mentions the thing. We built the console because we want to build a better PC, which could then perform for gaming. At the end of the day, the console has an experience that is unparalleled, and it delivers performance that is unparalleled. which is good to hear, but overall they are pushing towards this whole Windows machine thing. You know, that whole idea of the Xbox full screen experience is what Satya is referring to here, which is the thing that is talked about in regards to the Rogue Xbox Ally. If you end up forking out for the new handheld Xbox experience, you can do the full screen Xbox experience, which is ostensibly just what the Steam Deck has. If you don't want to deal with the guts of an operating system, you can have this UI layer over the top, which is what the Rogue Ally X has. However, the Rogue Ally X or the Rogue Ally, is built on top of Windows itself. You also had Xbox boss Sarah Bond say that the Ally X, or the Rogue Ally is the handheld, sorry, that they are indicative of the future of Xbox overall, i.e. the guts of a thing being Windows and an Xbox layer on top. However, as I mentioned in a previous news video, all of the people who have got hands-on with the Rogue Ally have mentioned that you can't escape the Windows-ness of it, whether that's random sound effects pinging off in the background, whether that's the system coming loaded with OneDrive and Microsoft Teams and all the stuff that you would just get pre-baked into a Windows machine anyway. It's all just under there. This is not some super bespoke, custom bit of hardware, software combo that would, be a decent comparison to what you would expect from a console. This does feel like a handheld Windows machine with all the gross pop-ups and driver problems and optimization issues that you would always get with a Windows PC. I wanted to throw in as well, Xbox's Sarah Bond, offering an extension of that wider conversation on like, hey, don't worry about exclusives, don't worry about platform-specific stuff. We want to be available everywhere. She was saying that the idea of exclusives, like console exclusives, video game exclusives, that idea is antiquated, and she thinks that gamers have evolved past that. The thing that's ridiculous with that is if you just look at Starfield's sales a couple of years ago, that was one of the only times that Xbox consoles started to sell better. There was a massive surge in Xbox console sales, 76% in the UK, specifically because we had Starfield to play. There was something that was turning heads and something that was only available on Xbox, and you had to go and get an Xbox system to play it. Ergo, to quote the dude from the end of the Matrix, you had to go and buy an Xbox, and it resulted in better hardware sales. Now, clearly, they are moving on from hardware sales. They are moving on to this weird executive speak, cloud gaming available everywhere, stream your favorite games in approach. But they do have the evidence for why exclusives matter. And it reminded me again of, all of this stuff, it just goes back for the last few years. Back in 2023, Phil Spencer was to be, talking about the failure of the Xbox brand compared to PlayStation and Nintendo with Kind of Funny. And he said, I see the commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you'll see console shares shift in some dramatic way. This idea that if we just focused more on great games, on our console, that somehow we're going to win the console race, it doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. He said like 90% of people every year who walk into a retailer to buy a console are already a member of one of the three ecosystems. One of those ecosystems is Xbox, though, and also, like I said, Starfield was responsible for so much of a surge in pure raw hardware sales, which brings me into another nail in the coffin that refuses to be buried, which is Xbox announcing their ongoing financials, but they've just released the statistics for July to September, and contents and services, i.e. Game Pass, was up 1%, so, woohoo for that, but console sales are down 29%, even just across the last few months. Clearly, people are not responding to the console side of things when it comes to Xbox, which does line up with, you can see why executives would then push into the cloud framing stuff, but it just isn't the way forward for a console-based business. You have that idea of we're competing with short form, we're competing with TikTok, we're just competing for people's attention, which, like, sure, literally anything on earth is. It's not really a meaningful thing to say when you're in this particular medium. And also trying to downplay the idea of exclusives when you just had something like Pokemon sell 6 million copies in the first few days. It's Ghost of Yotei absolutely flying, one of the year's biggest sales statistics in only the first few days of release as well, and that's only on one platform. It's worth saying that all of this stuff is happening because of the Activision acquisition, with Microsoft CFO Amy Hood, reported by Bloomberg, wanting a 30% accountability margin in regards to profit for the Xbox division, which is why all of the price hikes are happening on the console side, why Game Pass is going up, why all of these weird moves just seem to be happening, and they can't seem to be able to take the time to nurture the exclusives properly. They need to jack the prices up on the things that are already out there for the fan base that is already out there. How do they get more money out of the existing Xbox fan base while it remains, while they make this weird pivot into Windows gaming? And then they'll make a lot more money on just raw publishing deals. The idea of the Xbox exclusive, especially with Gears and Halo and Forza going over to PlayStation, is far long out the window. But the behind the scenes reason why is because Microsoft want more money overall from the Xbox division because of the deal that went through a few years ago in regards to buying Activision Blizzard. That was a $69 billion deal, and after Phil Spencer put all that stuff together and had to get all that money from, I was going to say his parents, but the parent company, Microsoft, they want that stuff to make sense after the fact. And clearly, they haven't put Call of Duty on Game Pass. They haven't really made that much use of those IPs, even though it did move the needle a little bit on their bottom line. Still, there's a lot more money that needs to be accounted for, and that is why all of this stuff is happening, and happening in such quick succession. Like I said, we have a different news update almost every day. I also feel like applying a massive profit margin to a company that is underneath an umbrella company is how corporate always kills stuff, because then they don't have to say to shareholders, oh, we're getting rid of this division. They don't have to deal with the public blowback. They can just set an internal milestone that is impossible to hit, and then in a year from now or a few months from now, they go, well, Xbox hasn't hit the goals that we set. Clearly it's underperforming, and it makes more sense for the wider shareholder view of the company itself. I feel like that is exactly what is happening. Xbox right now is just a term for shareholders, and it will go out the window as the Windows gaming stuff starts to come in even more. I think going forward, they just want to use that massive portfolio of IP that they've acquired across the last decade or so to become the biggest publisher in the games industry, because, they really only do care about the margins, which brings it back to the Satya Nadella interview, where he says that the only way to innovate is having good margins. He reckons that's the only way that you can then fund new ideas, which, tell me the last time they had a new idea. That would be the part for me. But the overall plan going forward just seems to be that they want to be the biggest publisher in the industry, and anything in regards to what Xbox once meant or what Xbox could be is out the window. And you might be completely on board with that. Windows gaming, a Windows PC in your living room, that kind of thing, totally fine if that's what you are up for. That is what they are selling. But I think there's a lot of obfuscation in regards to the meaning behind what an Xbox even is. And we're seeing in real time the weird forced evolution from a former console-only exclusive-based business across the 2000s, early 2010s, into this malformed multi-platform publisher business. And that's just what's happening. That is the plan going forward.